Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show. Hey, Jai Picks, the other half of the show, the Parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC Vegas 90. Let's get it. After a wild card, UFC Atlantic City, we're back at the Apex, the 90th card at the Apex. This is a historic time. We're only 10 events away from UFC Apex 100. I'm really looking forward to it. This card's actually not too bad. It's some solid fights. Like we say this damn near every time, but like some solid fights, interesting fights. Not one that you're going to get over and want to watch every single one of them, but we will be there watching every single one of them, and we'll probably have a bet almost on every single one of them. We're going to go through and give you every single pick, but before we do that, we got to talk about UFC at Atlantic City. It was a weird card. Somehow, I managed to be in the profit, and I chalked that up as a W because that was a variance to the max card. Like just a bunch of wild stuff happened. You got Blanchfield not being able to do anything with her ground game. You got Luque falling on his back, kind of just giving it up. You got the two eye pokes in the Weidman-Nursultan fight. You got the early stoppage in the Algeo fight. I could go on for damn near every fight on the card. So it was a wild one. Somehow I managed to be in the profit. A lot of that is thanks to Manon Fiorot cashing as the dog for me and cashing the decision as well at plus 350. And big thanks to Jacob Malkoon for having some sturdy hip bones because I cashed the Malkoon by KO at plus 425 as well. So those are my two big hitters. I was up just a little under unit, and I'll take that all day in a weird card like that. How'd it go for you?
Yeah, I was down minus 4.12 units, and a card that I should have been up. I took so many plays off my card that I wasn't confident in. They were underdogs that I should have just went with my gut. I talked myself out of them. I made some dumb plays. I don't know. It's just a weird card. When you get that many weird outcomes, you're just bound to have a losing night, in my opinion. I'm just never on the right side of those strange decisions, strange, stoppages, the fights and all that. Like, for example, just my picks, not my bets. I took Ruzabayev. I said I thought he's going to finish him early or he's going to lose a decision. And then I took Weidman, I took Buckley, and I took Fiorot. And I didn't have a single bet on any of those fights. Oh man, I had the under 2.5 in the Buckley Luque fight, but I didn't take any of those fighters that I picked, and the three of them were underdogs and decent sized ones too. So, I got to trust myself a little more going into this one. I think from a betting standpoint, this card's a little more appeasing than the Atlantic City card. So I'm looking forward to get back into it.
I would agree. A lot of solid spots on this card, just based on looking at it from today and yesterday. There's some good fights, and I see a lot of value on the dogs. So looking forward to breaking this down with you. Two profitable cards in a row for me. So looking to make that 3 straight here. I feel good going into this week. Once again, if you want the all the bets for my bets, Nolan's bets, and Derek Brunson and JJ's, you can jump in the Home of Fight Picks Discord. Link is down in the description below. You can use the code HeyJive or Parlay for $5 off. Go join that. And we can start with the breakdown here. Started with the first fight of the night. Nora Cornolle coming in as the underdog against Melissa Mullins. Mullins coming in as a near 3-1 favorite. Women's MMA at some of the lowest level. They're not terrible fighters. Nora Cornolle, more of a striker. Melissa Mullins, more of a well-rounded game. They're both 1-0 in the UFC. They're not very young. They're low 30s. And they only got one fight in the UFC. Don't know how well their ceiling is. I don't think it's very high. But either way, it's going to go down at the Apex. And this one seems greasy as hell to me. I'm seeing Mullins as the grappling threat here. Nora Cornolle got taken down a bunch of times her last fight, but still managed to win. So what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, it's very interesting. But in I don't even want to say low level because both these girls are pretty good at certain aspects of mixed martial arts. But in a fight between two girls with only one fight in their UFC career, it's hard to ignore an underdog that's plus 220 who is going to be pretty evenly matched on the feet. I was looking into Nora Cornolle. She beats Jocelyn Edwards in her home country in a very close fight where she was taken down and controlled. Jocelyn Edwards didn't really land a lot of damage, and Cornolle landed some good elbows in the clinch, knees, and at range landed some good shots when it was there. But in her background is Muay Thai, and I believe, at least online, it's saying she's a 5-time French national champion women's Muay Thai winner, champ. So, I mean, that shows you that she's got some capability on the feet. You could definitely see it in that Jocelyn Edwards fight. She's good with her kicks. She goes to the body well. She'll rip the legs as well, which I like to see. And, Melissa Mullins fights the Russian Ronda in her first fight, who we know likes to get these wild submissions. She likes to get fights to the ground. She's wild. She'll throw some bombs. And Mullins landed some really good jabs. She fought well off of her jab in that first round. She stayed composed when Alexieva was just kind of, bull rushing her with these shots. But she was getting hit by a girl in Irene Alexieva who is not technical, who will just kind of brawl with you. She knocked down Melissa Mullins late in that first round, like pretty bad. That was a straight right hand right down the pipe, dropped her. And, if it was more time in the round, it could have been all she wrote. She could have gone on top, got a submission, whatever. She also landed a takedown in that fight, and the significant strikes were very close until it ended until it went to a decision. So I don't think Melissa Mullins is deserving of being a minus 295 here. I think while this fight plays out on the feet, it's going to be very, very even. I think Nora Cornolle can probably hold her own with most girls on the feet at this level. Melissa Mullins is no exception. I think if Mullins really wants to separate her in this bout, she's got to grapple like Jocelyn Edwards did. I think she's going to be better there. But in that Edwards fight with Nora was taken down, and she was able to, hit some sweeps and reverse position at times and work her way back to the feet. So I don't think she's a slouch anywhere. At plus 220, I'm rocking with the underdog straight off the bat in this card. I think it's going to be one of those types of cards. So give me Nora Cornolle. I like it. I'm probably going to have a little wager on it.
Yeah, everything about this fight screams to me, do not bet. Because Melissa Mullins, she has the grappling edge. She had 8 minutes of control time against Arina Alexeva. She's undefeated. She did beat Daria Zaleshnikova, who we saw a couple weeks ago, by a ground and pound. So she's got skills on the ground. But she had landed 0 takedowns against Arina Alexeva. So she was getting taken to the ground or getting knocked to the ground and then doing her work there. So I don't know how good her takedowns are. But then you look at Nora Cornolle. She got taken down 5 times against Jocelyn Edwards. She got controlled for 8 minutes of that fight, but somehow she still managed to win. So I'm like, I don't know. It's probably just going to be a greasy decision. And I guess based on that, it's probably going to take the women's dog. Like, why not take a women's dog? I'll take her for the pick. I don't know if I'll bet it, just because I think Mullins' ground game is a lot better than Jocelyn Edwards. I don't know how well her takedowns are. And the weird thing to me is, like, Jocelyn Edwards is normally a striker. She doesn't normally go try to take fights to the ground. So I don't know if she went into that fight knowing that Cornolle might be the better striker and she saw the advantage on the ground, and that's the reason she did it, or if she just felt that early in the fight and she wanted to take the fight to the ground. So I don't know. I'm going to chalk this up to a dog or pass. I'll take Cornolle for the pick, but this is a fight I'll probably stay away from. If anything, maybe I get to the dog. We'll move on. We got Dylan Budka versus Cesar Almeida. Dylan Budka coming in as the favorite. Almeida, the underdog at plus 145. Almeida, 36 years of age. The Glory kickboxer who had the fight on the Contender Series and is now making his UFC debut. He got the win as a big underdog against Lucas Fernando. Budka making his debut as well after getting a win on the Contender Series against Chad Hanekom in a fight that was very boring. But somehow Dylan Budka still gets the contract. He's a lot younger, and he's got 2 losses on his record. What are you thinking?
Yeah, minus 180 again is just strange in this type of matchup. We've seen judges kind of all over the place with their scoring criteria, but we've seen a lot of judges kind of disregard the control time in the cage pushing and going with the guy who's landing more strikes when they're at range and in the clinch and everything, which I think is going to be Cesar Almeida here. I don't think Dylan Budka is going to look to mess around in anything other than the grappling and wrestling in this fight. I think he's going to straight off the bat try to push him against the cage, get him down to the ground, and work from there. And I think that's kind of reflected in the line. People are going to see that Cesar Almeida is 4-0 in mixed martial arts, and they're going to see a very wrestling heavy style of fighter, and they're going to think he's going to be able to just get him down because Almeida's a kickboxer. But I just haven't been impressed with Budka. Contender Series, boring fight, gets a contract. Before that, he had a submission on the regional scene. But, he's losing split decisions. He's winning decisions. He's not really finishing many people. The majority of his wins do come by decision. So when you get to the UFC level, like I just got to see some more finishing upside to be confident in a debuter at minus 180. Cesar Almeida has been in kickboxing matches against Alex Pereira. He's got that kind of level of kickboxing. And, while this fight is at range, Almeida should be able to just absolutely torch Budka on the feet. He should be able to land kicks. If he can keep Budka off of him, it's going to get really ugly, in my opinion. And when Budka starts to get tired, I also believe this is going to get ugly because in the clinch and when Budka's got him up against the cage trying to get takedowns, Almeida's going to be throwing elbows. He's going to be landing knees up the middle. That's just the style of fight he's used to. So on the Contender Series for Almeida, he was taken down 3 times by his opponent. However, he hit some reversals. He was able to, end up on top, and the control time was damn near dead even. 5 minutes, 44 seconds for his opponent, 5 minutes, 43 seconds for Cesar Almeida. And that's with him getting taken down 3 times. He also landed like 40 or 50 more significant strikes through the course of that 3-round fight. So I got to go with the guy who's got more finishing upside, the guy who, has high-level mixed martial arts experience in his past. And, it's like the Manon Farrow, Aaron Blanchfield argument. You're getting an Aaron Blanchfield who's kind of one-dimensional and has one path to victory. And if that path fails, you're screwed. So, yeah, give me the dog again. 2 underdogs start the night. Give me Cesar Almeida.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to make the same comparison. It's like Cesar Almeida has a whole life's work of kickboxing under his belt. And that's kind of the same for Manon Farrow. Like, she was in combat sports for almost her entire life. She is older, but she's got a lot more experience when it comes to actual fights. Dylan Budka's 24. He is a pretty strong dude. I would expect him to get some takedowns, but I think on the feet, he's just going to be outmatched. And the way that they've been scoring these fights, you got to do stuff on the feet. You can't hold guys against the cage and expect to win. Like, I don't know what Reese McGee was doing last week, but not the game plan, buddy. You can't hold people against the cage and expect to win unless you're that one judge that actually gave him the fight. And I don't expect that to happen here. I think Cesar Almeida does the better work on the feet, is able to stuff some takedowns. He'll get taken down, but I think he'll be able to weather it and do the better damage on the feet. And as the dog, I think it's a no-brainer. I'll take him. Move on. Dan Argueta coming in as the dog against the debuting Jean Matsumotto, coming in as a pretty heavy favorite. 24 years of age for this Matsumotto guy, undefeated, 14-0. Got the win on the Contender Series against a pretty solid opponent in Casey Tanner. That was a pretty solid fight. I think Casey Tanner's a good fighter. He was 6-0 at the time, training out of Fight Ready in Arizona. It's a good camp. He's a young guy, and Matsumotto was able to win a decision there pretty cleanly. It was a solid back-and-forth fight, but I think he clearly won. Gets the contract. He's fighting Dan Argueta, who has had some decent performances as of late. He's coming off a loss to Miles Johns, but Miles Johns tested for something, so it's a no contest. Technically, he's coming off of 2 no contests. One was against Ronnie Lawrence, where he had a guillotine locked in, and it was a premature stoppage. He had a good performance for the time that it was, and then another no contest against Miles John in a fight that he definitely lost. But he's an underdog here. He's got the experience. What are you thinking?
This is another one that, it's hard to not take a closer look at the dog and Dan Argueta because, Matsumoto Contender Series fight, I thought he looked pretty good. He shows a lot of promise. He still is younger, like you mentioned, 24 years old. He's got time to take a loss and learn from it. I like his skills, though, all around. He's got some great kicks. He's tough, obviously. He can go the distance. He's shown that. But, on his record, if you look at all, I guess he's got 6 decision wins, but he's also got 5 subs and 3 KOs, too. This guy's is a finisher. And, going up against Dan Argueta, we kind of know what we're getting at this point. He's going to try to smother you. He will throw some bombs. He's got some decently heavy hands. He kind of wings them a little wild, but he uses them to set up his takedowns. And he's very good at getting fights to the mat. Once he does, the thing I do like about Argueta, and I do like betting on him, is that he just doesn't really allow his opponents to get back to their feet. I don't know. He's very good with his balance and his weight to make sure he can keep guys on the ground, and he gets control, lands some good ground and pound. And, he's got decent guillotines, and if he can take the back, he'll sink in some rear naked chokes. But again, Gene Matsumoto is showing that he got submission wins on the regional scene too. He's not going to be a slouch on the ground. Argueta kind of had a tough go of it, but in his last 2 fights, at least with 2 no contests. But this is a tough debut for Gene here, in my opinion, because Argueta can kind of, he's not going to want the fight on the feet the whole time, but he is dangerous, and like I said, the wrestling pedigree is very good. So I think Gene Matsumoto's in for a tough fight, minus 220 on a UFC debuter who's 24 years old, going up against a guy like Dan, who's super strong, by the way. And the thing I was going to say at the beginning, Dan struggles at times, I think, when he's a little bit undersized, when he's shorter than guys, and he doesn't have the biggest or longest reach. But he will be, I think, an inch taller than Gene Matsumoto here, which is interesting. So he's fighting. Last fight was Miles Johns, who's shorter too. But going up against the debuter, I'm really tempted to pull the trigger on the underdog here. And at the same time, I think Matsumoto actually is pretty damn skilled. I think he's going to be a good prospect in the UFC. So I'm going to stick with experience. I'm going to stick with the smothering wrestler here in Dan Argueta. 3 underdogs to start the night. I don't know. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I like the Matsumoto guy. Like, he's got really good skills all around. Like, the stand-up is super crisp. The only thing he's lacking is, like, some power. He doesn't have really solid power on the feet. And his grappling is good, but it's going to be tested to the max here against Dan Argueta. Like, Dan Argueta is not going to mess around on the feet. He's going to go for the takedowns. He's going to try to take the back, and he's good in the scrambles. Matsumoto probably hasn't seen that level of a wrestler, grappler type yet. So that really scares me away from a minus 220 on Matsumoto, let alone he's 24 making his debut. I love the skills, but Dan Argueta is a guy that can easily go in there and turn the entire fight around within that round 1. And he's got solid pace. It's not like he's going to fall off a cliff with his cardio. And I look at the last fight between Argueta and Miles Johns. I thought that was a terrible matchup for Argueta, just because Miles Johns has big power on the feet and he has great wrestling. He's not, the cardio is always something that scares you with Miles Johns, but he has great wrestling, and he has big power. If you look at the fight on the feet, Argueta was just getting stung with anything. He came in and he felt it every time. I don't know that Matsumoto is going to be able to really stun him with stuff if he rushes in. Maybe just with the timing and the precision of his striking, he could. But if Argueta gets in on the takedown, he's going to be super dangerous because he threatens with the submissions really quick too. Like, I'm honestly tempted to maybe bet an Argueta round 1 sub because he's dangerous in that first round. In his UFC career, he's attempted 7 submissions, like 2 in every single fight. The first one, 6 submissions, 2 in every single one of his last 3 fights. So he's going to go for it. And at the dog money, I don't hate it. I'm tempted to take it as well. But if the fight ends up on the feet, I don't think it'll go well for him. Like, I don't think his striking is very good, but he's the dog. And plus 168 against the UFC debuter might be the side. For the pick, I'm going to go with Dan Argueta, just because I'm not going to bitch out here and just take the chalk here. I'm going to go with Dan just because he's got the experience. I think he's an underrated fighter in the bantamweight division, so I'll take him. Moving on, we got Piera Rodriguez coming in as the favorite over Cynthia Calvillo. Calvillo sitting at plus 142. She is on a 5-fight losing streak. She is 36. And she's taking out Piera Rodriguez, who is decent. And she's coming off a win her last time out. Is that correct?
Lost to Jillian Robertson at Kansas City.
Yeah, she fought after that. I must have be thinking about somebody else. But yeah, she lost to Jillian Robertson. We were there. We had Jillian by sub and a cash. So she hasn't fought since then. Seems like a long time, almost a year.
Yeah.
So maybe she went back to the drawing board and she's been working on her skills. Maybe she looks like an improved version here, but does seem a little pricey. Even though Cynthia's on a 5-fight losing streak, like she's still a vet. She still fought some pretty solid competition. Piera Rodriguez is probably going to be the easiest fight she's had in quite some time. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Piera Rodriguez, I've just never been super impressed with her on the feet. I think she's a little slower. She's kind of got an awkward movement where she kind of just tiptoes around, like almost slow. She doesn't really get her head off the center line that well. She'll throw some kicks. But she's going to have a lot of success when she can fight girls she's stronger than. She's got good takedowns. We've seen her land upwards of 5 takedown in fights before, but her level of competition in the UFC is just not good. You know, she lost to Jillian in her last fight, which is understandable. Jillian Roberts, if you get on the ground, you know, it's almost a wrap at this point. She'll sub you. Before that, she beat Sam Hughes, you know, by decision, landed 5 takedowns. That's why she beat her. Beat Kay Hansen, who's not even fighting anymore. And Kay Hansen was even able to take her down twice in that fight. And then she beats a girl in the Contender Series who's not good either. So going from a level like Sam Hughes is your last win, and then you get subbed by Jillian Rodriguez, or Robertson, sorry. And now you're going up here against the girl who's been in there with, you know, Lupi Godinez, Jessica Andrade, Caitlin Chukagian, you know, all of the girls that have at one point been at the very top of this division. It is a big gap and a big jump in competition. And it's going to be tough because Cynthia Calvillo has that style that can kind of match Piera Rodriguez in the grappling. I mean, Cynthia Calvillo's fought all of these girls at the top level. And, you know, the Carla Esparzas, Joanne Wood, Madrina Rodriguez, Jessica I, and she's got a 77% takedown defense. Like, that's pretty damn good at, you know, for that many UFC fights. She'll also land nearly 2 per fight at a pretty high clip, 44%. She's got good volume on the feet. Her striking defense number is high, 64% striking defense. The big thing is just going to be the layoff and her age. I mean, Piera Rodriguez is not like a 26, 27-year-old young, hungry killer by any means. She's 32, I believe, herself. If I was reading that right. Yeah, 31, actually. So I don't know. This is another spot that I'm tempted to really look at the underdog because I haven't seen what I've liked out of Piera Rodriguez. Cynthia Calvillo hasn't looked the best, obviously, but you know, she has a ton of experience. A lot of people thought she beat Lupi Godinez. She outlanded her 104-87 on significant strikes. She landed the only takedown of the fight against Lupi, but ultimately lost a split decision. So, yeah, man, I'm going to take the dog again. I'm going to take Cynthia Calvillo. I like a lot of these underdogs this week. I like the experience versus non-experience. I just don't see where Piera Rodriguez is really going to have her outmatched in this unless Cynthia comes off of, you know, only fighting once or twice in the last 2 years and is just flat-footed, not as fast as she once was, not as strong, and hasn't really been working hard in the offseason. So I don't know, man. I just don't see where Piera is going to dominate her in this fight. So if you're going to give me nearly plus 150 on a very experienced bet, I'm going to take it.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same way. Like, you know, if this line wasn't the way it is, maybe I'd be, you know, tempted to take Piera Rodriguez because she's younger. I think she probably makes the improvements, but there's no chance that I'm taking minus 184 on Rodriguez. Like Calvillo, she's 36. She's on a 5-fight losing streak. But this is women's MMA. And a lot of times we see this where you get a veteran that's just been fighting at the top of the level, or at least the level that Piera Rodriguez hasn't seen yet. And she goes in there and pulls it off. Like at 36, she's not, for women's MMA, it's not like terrible. Like women can usually fight later into their career rather than men, just because they don't rely on the explosiveness or their power or their durability as much. Like it's not like Calvillo's got chin issues or anything. So I think skill for skill, she's probably at least on par or better than Piera Rodriguez. And I think there's value on her as the dog as well. I'll take her for the pick. And hopefully she can snap that 5-fight losing streak because I'm sure she's very motivated to do so. Yeah. And I believe she trains in Las Vegas. She's probably going to be super motivated to get this one done. I'll take her.
Here's another thing to think about. Like if Cynthia Calvillo has the same exact fight in this one that she did against Lupi, she's going to beat the shit out of Piera Rodriguez. She lands over 100 significant strikes against Piera here and lands a takedown. She's going to win. And I think Lupi's a lot better than Piera. So I'm
agree.
surprised this line's lined this way.
We move on. We got Alatangheili coming in as a slight dog against Victor Hugo, coming in at -125. Hugo, 31 years of age, making his UFC debut after picking up a win on the Contender Series. It was a round 2 knee bar. This guy's on quite the winning streak. 13 wins in a row to be exact. And I watched that fight back again. I remember that fight on the Contender Series, and I'm like, this guy he's fighting might be the better striker. And you got to watch out for the knee bar, Victor Hugo. What does he do? He just gives up his knee. Like Hugo's the knee bar hunter. And if he can find it here on Alatangheili, he could probably finish it off. So what are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I'm just not haven't been real impressed with Alatangheili. He's got some wins as of late, but it's Kevin Kroom and it's Chad Anheliger. And then the loss to Chris Gutierrez, which was ugly because he got outlanded like 110-38. It was just a lopsided mess. So I think he could be really good. I think he's skilled. Like, he's got good wrestling. He's got good takedown defense, but he's so low volume when it's on the feet. I mean, this guy lands 2.88 per minute and gets hit with over 5. Like, that's a terrible striking differential. Just shows you, like, at distance, this guy gets picked apart. He's not accurate at all, but he does hold power. So if he can clip you, like, he can put guys out, but he just doesn't put himself in that opportunity very often. You look at Victor Hugo, he's a guy who can weather storms, I think. I think he's tough, and he kind of makes fights nasty. And if he can get you to the ground or just get you in a position where he can grab onto a limb, there's a lot of times he'll be able to kind of pull off weird submissions like that, like we saw in the Contender Series. His fight before that, he won by heel hook. And I look at the level of competition with these debuters all the time. Victor Hugo's got some of the better level of competition for a regional scene fighter that I've seen in a while. He's fighting guys like on the Contender Series. His opponent was 16-1. His fight before that, 15-7, 23-9, 17-8, 3-1, 5-1, 19-3, 6-0. Like, he's fighting guys with a lot of wins. So I like seeing that. I do think even on the feet, he should land more in this fight. I don't know if he's going to have the same power that Alatangheili does. And in the grappling department, even if he does get taken down, I think he's going to be dangerous enough to look better to the judges, if I'm being honest. I think Alatangheili's only path to victory here is to clip him sometime when they're on the feet, or somehow he's strong enough and he's got good enough wrestling to just control Victor Hugo, but I just don't see that path happening. So I'm going to take the favorite first time on the card. Give me Victor Hugo.
Yeah, I don't think Alatangheili is very good either. Like, you look at his losses in the UFC, they're to Chris Gutierrez and Casey Kenny. Who knows where the hell Casey Kenny is, because he's a pretty solid fighter. But like, those are his losses. But then you look at his wins and they're not good. Like Chad Anhelinger, Kevin Kroom, Dana Bakary, like guys that just aren't really UFC level. And if they're in the UFC, they're very, very low level. So I don't really think he's that good. And you see a lot of these Chinese fighters that they just kind of rely on their opponent being able to, or being willing to come forward, and then they can throw hands. Victor Hugo is kind of that way. Like, he's willing to engage on the feet. He throws pretty powerful shots. But then on the ground, I think if Alatangheili tries to wrestle him up, like, Hugo's going to have the grappling edge. And I don't think it'll go well for him. So I think Victor Hugo could probably snatch up a sub here on the ground, or on the feet. He can land some big shots. And maybe even knock him out. Like, Alatangheili's been knocked out 3 times. I think everything points to Victor Hugo here. I know it's his debut. Don't really love betting those, but the line's not crazy. I think he's the better skilled fighter and more dangerous in a lot of ways as well. I mean, he's 24-4, so he's got a lot of experience. Yeah. Got a lot of experience. 13-fight win streak. I'm not going to go against it here against a guy like Alatangheili. So give me Victor Hugo, and don't mind the price.
I'll be interested to see what like the under is. Let's see, under 2.5 is -115. I don't mind it because Hugo has shown, like, in his last 5-6 fights, he's finished it. And Alatangheili's got the power in his hands, and Victor Hugo has been knocked out twice on the regional scene. So I think there's violence written all over this fight, because even if they do get into like a wrestling match or a grappling match, Victor Hugo's got enormous submission upside. So. Yeah, I'm going to be looking at that under.
Don't mind it. We'll move on. to big Norma Dumont, coming in as the over 2-1 favorite against Germaine de Randamie, making her return fight here at the Apex. Comes in at a plus 164 underdog. She is 39 years of age. She hasn't fought in about 3.5 years. Her last fight was against Juliana Pena, and she got a round 3 guillotine choke back in 2020 or October of 2020. So it's been a while. I believe she had a kid, and now she is coming back. I guess maybe she's looking at the women's bantamweight division, and she's like, these chicks suck. I could probably come in here, get a win, and maybe even be in a title fight if I do it in an exciting fashion, because she's got the name. I mean, she's had the fights with Amanda Nunes. She's got a win over Holly Holm. She's got a win over the current champ, Raquel Pennington. So she's probably looking at the division like she could clean up. And of course, like I said, she's got the win over Juliana Pena. So another former champ. Big Norm. Don't know how the weight cut's going to go because she's definitely a 145er. Got a lot of junk in the trunk. Don't know how well that weight cut's going to go. But she's going to try to do it. Her last fight was at featherweight, and that was in July of 2023. She's going to have to try to make bantamweight here. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's another fight where minus 215 on Norma Dumont just seems a little high for me. It's a little bit like, I mean, Germaine de Randamie is going to have a lot more experience, and, coming off of a layoff, hasn't fought in a while, reminds me a little bit of Calvillo, even though Calvillo is basically like 1 or 2 fights in the last few years. But de Randamie's similar. She's got a lot of high level experience. The only difference is like she wasn't really losing fights before she came back. She wasn't on a losing streak. She's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 6-1 in her last 7 fights. So her only loss being Amanda Nunes too. Just shows you the level of competition she's fighting. Her last fight in 2020 submitted Juliana Pena in the 3rd round, which nobody saw coming. Everybody thought it was going to be striker, grappler. Juliana Pena would win by sub. de Randamie could win by knockout. And, able to catch her in the guillotine, high elbow, and then knocked out Aspen Ladd in her fight before that, or win before that. Beat Raquel Pennington before that. Beat Holly Holm before that. Like, this girl's putting together, a resume. Knocked out Larissa Pacheco a few fights before that. It's crazy the level of competition that she's fought and beat. So against Norma Dumont, if it stays on the feet, I just think Norma's going to be at a speed disadvantage. She's going to be probably, at a, 4-inch reach disadvantage. And de Randamie is a, Muay Thai champion in her own right. She has some power. I don't know how many times she wobbled Juliana Pena in that fight. She was just very, very long with her punches. And I think, going up against a girl like Norma, who's not long, who's used to fighting up a weight class, I think there's going to be a big speed advantage for de Randamie, an experience advantage. Like I said, she's going from fighting the Amanda Nunes's and Juliana Pena's, and now she's fighting Norma Dumont. So I think this line should be a lot closer to, I know Juliana sucks, but
I was just laughing because you named off those names, and then I'm looking at Norma Dumont, and it's Chelsea Chandler, Rosa, Daniel Wolf. Like, what the fuck is going on? Minus 215 on Norma Dumont is
crazy.
It's pretty insane. I'm not gonna lie.
That's why I've already locked in de Randamie at this price, because I think people are going to get hip to it and they're going to start betting de Randamie, and this line's going to come down. It's just another fight, man. I'm taking experience. I'm taking the better striker here. And in women's MMA, if you give me those two things, a lot of times those underdogs are going to cash. So give me Germaine.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like, skill for skill, Germaine de Randamie is levels above Norma Dumont. Like, I see the path to victory for Norma. It's going to be throw her up against the cage, use your strength, get her to the ground, because de Randamie can get taken down and she can be controlled there. That's how she's lost in the past. Like, that's how Nunes beat her the second time, took her down like 8 times. But that tells you something. Like, Amanda Nunes didn't want to stand and trade with Germaine de Randamie. She went with the easier path to victory, take her down, and do your work there. Norma, could she do that? Sure. But at minus 215, not a chance in the world am I doing that. Like, she is going to be a massive bantamweight if she can make the weight. But Germaine de Randamie is also a massive bantamweight. Like, she's 5'9". She's going to have 5.5 inches in reach on Norma Dumont. The striking is going to be a mismatch. It's kind of seems like a no brainer. Like, I don't know if you're betting minus 215 on Norma Dumont, like, maybe call the hotline, or I guess maybe you don't know who Jermaine Randamie is, or at least you haven't watched film on her, because she is a great kickboxer, and I think she could probably pull off this win, maybe even knock her out, because with that weight cut of for Norma, chin might be an issue, and she's been knocked out before. She got knocked out by Megan Anderson in her debut fight, so this could be a big comeback for Jermaine and launch her into the title picture, because she's gonna be rushed there if she picks up a win here, because they definitely need somebody there in the bantamweight division. So I'm gonna take Jermaine as well as the dog. Moving on, we got Court McGee at plus 260 against Alex, the Great White Morono, coming in at minus 360. I'm not going to lie, it's tough to bet Morono at minus 360. But Court McGee is coming off back-to-back knockouts, both in the first round. He is 39. I guess I can understand it that way, but what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think first I'll say keep the minus 360 Alex Morono out of your parlays this week. I don't necessarily think Court McGee is going to go out there and win, but Morono's not a guy you should be trusting at this price ever, in my opinion. Court McGee has a long career in the UFC. You look at some of his wins, he's beaten Robert Whittaker. He's beaten, some decent fighters, but you look a little bit further down the line, the Robert Whittaker win is 11 years ago. Like, this guy has just been around so long. He's taken so much damage, a lot of wear and tear. Coming off of 2 knockout losses, like, it just doesn't look good to me. Morono is going to have a speed advantage. I don't know if he'll have a power advantage, even being the younger fighter here, because Court McGee does have some heavier hands. I think Court, though, if he wants to win the fight, he's got to go out there and make it ugly. I don't think he can stand at range with Morono and try to outstrike him. He's got to put him up against the fence, shoot for some takedowns, try to get into a dominant position. Like I said, just make it ugly, because if you try to fight a technical fight with Morono and you're 39 years old, probably a step slower, it's just not going to be a fun night for you. I don't know if Morono knocks him out here, but if Court McGee does try to go to the takedowns and try to get it on the ground, Morono's a pretty high-level black belt when it comes to a submission game. So I haven't been impressed with Morono lately, obviously, but I do think he should beat the 39-year-old here. Morono, coming off the loss to Buckley decision, was able to eat those shots, submitted Tim Means, before that knocked out by Ponzinibbio, and then the 4 fights before that he won. He was on a nice little streak. So I'm not ready to bet Alex Morono at minus 360 by any means. I might look at the submission prop because I know he's got it in his back pocket. And I think if McGee tries to go for the wrestling, I think Morono will be a little hip to it, and he's good with the subs. So that's about all I got for this fight, man. I'm very uninterested in this one. I don't know what else you got, but give me Morono for the pick, but probably staying away from any kind of bets unless it's a submission prop or something.
Yeah, I kind of echo the same thing. Like, I'm on Morono for the pick as well. Don't love the price. Don't know if I'd use it in a parlay. Like, Court McGee still got some decent skills. It's just the chin has failed him his last 2 fights. Maybe you look at a Morono round 1, because he's going to be most dangerous in round 1. And he's got a couple knockouts in round 1, and he's got a number of knockdowns in round 1. So when you see the number on that, I don't know if it'll be that good, because he's minus 360. They kind of see the writing on the wall for Court McGee, but if he doesn't finish him in round 1, then it gets a little dicey at minus 360. Like, Morono's a guy that's going to throw a lot of volume, usually not the biggest power puncher, but sometimes he could shock you and land some pretty solid shots. Like, he was clipping Santiago Ponzinibbio until he got clipped. And overall, I mean, he's not a bad fighter. Minus 360, it's not like the greatest for Alex Morono. He should get the win. That's really what it just comes down to. He should get the win, but I don't love the price. Maybe you just play it round 1 or 2. But that's really all I got on that one, too. It's not really an interesting fight to me.
No, yeah.
Moving on, we got Trevor Peek coming in as a plus 176 dog against Charlie Campbell. When is Trevor Peek's chin going to give up on him? I don't know. I don't know if it'll ever, because the man just is able to take anything. He could take a sledgehammer to the head, and he'd probably just keep walking forward like he didn't care. But he is one of the most exciting fighters when it comes down to the lower levels of 155. Charlie Campbell is not a boring fighter by any means. He's a guy that's going to come out and throw the kitchen sink at you in round one, and he's going to do it in a little bit more of a technical way. So this is going to be two guys that are looking to throw down early. Maybe we see a fight where Charlie Campbell doesn't come out and throw everything at the kitchen sink because he knows Trevor Peek might be able to take it. So maybe he plays it a little different. But that's been his fight style in the past. It's worked out for him well. And sometimes it didn't work out for well on the Contender Series when he got knocked out after putting a beating on Chris Duncan. He gets flatlined there, finds his way in the UFC, and picks up a win in his first fight against Alex Reyes, where he was a massive favorite there. Nonetheless, he got it done in round one. Trevor Peek as a dog. What are you thinking?
Oh man, it's a tough one. Like it's all going to depend on, how much improvement Trevor Peek's been making between fights. Really, I think we've seen a little bit of improvement. I think more so than improvement. I think just more composure as his fights have gone on. He gets the wild knockout against Eric Gonzalez in his debut, but after that, kind of gets exposed for the cardio, and when he can't, knock somebody out brawling like he's in a bar, Chepe Mariscal was able to kind of go the distance with him, outland him, take him down, control him a bit, and grind out the decision win. And then against Muhammad Yahya, I think Trevor Peek did show that he learned a lot from his loss to Chepe, because he was way more composed. He was way slower in everything he did. Kind of waited to pick his shots a little more than just kind of brawling. Like we saw flashes of the brawling style, but for the most part, he fought a fight to try to play it safe in my eyes, and land 4 takedowns and try to get the win that way. And he was able to against Muhammad Yahya, who's not like a great fighter by any means, but he was 12-3. He'd been fighting on, I believe, UAE, if I remember correctly. Against some okay competition. So I think it was a good bounce back fight for Peek. I do think he showed that he's getting a little bit better, and he's kind of learning how to fight with his style at this level of mixed martial arts, because he came out against Gonzalez and just started brawling, and it paid off because he does have some power, and Gonzalez doesn't have the best chin. But then he got found out in his next fight. So I expect him to make a little bit more of a leap and a little bit more improvements here. Charlie Campbell, though, if he can eat the shots of Peek early, I think he's going to have a good chance to, to land his own on Trevor. And he's shown too, he's got some phenomenal power in his hands. Contender Series fight with Chris Duncan was just wild. Like he knocked him down with a straight right that was beautiful. I thought there was no way Duncan could recover from it, and then he gets back up. Charlie Campbell got a little overzealous and then ate one down the pipe and got flatlined. So the UFC gave Charlie Campbell Alex Reyes in his actual debut, which was kind of a layup for him. He was able to just basically beat the brakes off of him in the first round and then found the finish. But, even I noticed he slowed down a tad in that fight, and Alex Reyes was able to touch him just a little bit. Like he didn't land that many shots, but when he did, it just looked like Charlie Campbell didn't have really much regard for his striking defense. Maybe it's because he didn't think that Reyes had much power, or he wasn't worried about it. But if he fights like that against Peek, I do think Peek will have a chance to rock him and crack the chin. Overall, though, I'm going to take the more polished fighter here in Campbell. I do think he will have the ability to land on Peek, and he does hit very hard. And, Peek will eat some shots. So I don't know if his chin goes in this fight, but I am going to take Charlie Campbell. I got a feeling he's just going to be a slightly better all-around mixed martial artist at this point in their careers, because they're at very similar spots. I think Trevor Peek's 9-1, Campbell's 8-2. So yeah, I'm going to take Campbell, but I'm probably not going to bet him at -230 by any means. I think this is dog or pass if you're playing it. You could probably bet violence in this spot too.
Yeah, this one's weird because Trevor Peek, he's going to have a tough matchup here because Charlie Campbell's a big dude. He's a big 155er. I mean, 6 foot. He's going to have a couple inches in reach, and he's going to have the better overall striking. But it's Trevor Peek, man. Like, the guy could take a shot, and he won't really flinch. I think this could end up being like a war of attrition, and Trevor Peek might be able to take over late. I'm tempted to take like a Trevor Peek round 2 after he takes his beating in round 1, just because Charlie Campbell's going to put it on him early, I would assume. And Trevor Peek's going to be throwing stuff back at him. Now, one thing to know, Trevor Peek has moved to, I think he's training in Colorado now with with like Justin Gaethje and Dwayne Ludwig at what is it? Bang Muay Thai.
Yeah.
That's that camp. So I think he's making the right moves there. I don't know if that's gonna like truly play a factor in this fight, just because that's where he's done his training camp. I don't think you can make like significant technical improvements in 10 weeks. You know, I don't know if that's really going to show up here. And when those cage doors close, maybe that goes all out the window and he turns into Trevor Peek throwing hammer fists. It's just the dog or pass for me. Like plus 176 on Trevor Peek, a guy that's durable. And Charlie Campbell's a guy that's been knocked out before. And he finishes a lot of guys in round one. If he can't finish Trevor Peek, then Trevor Peek's going to be there. And we saw in his last fight, he's willing to go for takedowns too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's a little wrinkle in his game as well. He's a strong dude. And I think at plus 176, it's probably the only side that I'd be willing to play. Yeah. So I'll take him for the pick. And maybe I'll be looking at that round 2 KO for Trevor Peek, but he'll be my pick. Moving on, we got Walter Walker coming in as a big favorite here at minus 400 against Lucas Brzeski, sitting at plus 285. Brzeski 0 wins in the UFC, 0-3, and Walter Walker making his UFC debut at 11-0. He is the brother of Johnny Walker, but not like a close brother. Like Johnny Walker is Brazilian. He trains in Ireland, and Walter Walker is Brazilian, but he trains in Russia. And they don't really look alike. But honestly, when I was looking at the film, you could tell he's kind of Johnny Walker's brother, because there's something about like the Johnny Walker fight style where he looks a little uncoordinated at times. Like that's Walter Walker too, but he's a heavyweight. Mm-hmm. He is 6'6", he does an 81-inch reach, so he's a big dude. And overall, I mean, he's kind of just your typical heavyweight. Like he's got a decent jab, he's got a decent overhand. He'll mix in some high kicks, and in a lot of his fights, he looks to take the fight to the ground, use his strength there, use his weight, lay on you, land some ground and pounds. Against Lucas Brzeski, he could find some success with that, but I don't know, man. Minus 400 is pretty tough. What are you thinking?
Yeah, minus 400 at this weight class is definitely tough. But yeah, Walter, I mean, similar to Johnny Walker too, in the fact that they're both 6'6". They're huge. And Walter, he is kind of uncoordinated on the feet. Like you watch him strike at times, even it's like he's a very, very big guy, but with his striking, that's different from Johnny's. Walter doesn't like generate a whole ton of power with his shots. It's weird. Yeah. He's kind of more like a poke and prod at you and then land some decent shots and stuff. But I do think he's got a decent wrestling game for being this big and strong. And I do think that is going to be Lucas Brzeski's downfall. We kind of saw it with Carl Williams, who's a very good wrestler. So, no hate to Brzeski for getting taken down 8 times in that fight, but he was able to get taken down pretty easily. And when you got a big guy like Walter Walker, if he gets in on the legs, I think he's going to be able to take Lucas for a drive or for a ride here too, and put him on his back. And a 6'6" guy at 265 pounds is very tough to get off of you, especially when he's landing ground and pound. And if he moves into mount, this thing's over in my opinion. I do think Walter Walker gets the win here. I haven't been impressed with Brzeski in the least bit. He gets knocked out by Cortez Acosta, Waldo Cortez Acosta, who doesn't really knock anybody out. Just kind of ragdolled by Carl Williams. And then Martin Budai, they went to split decision. I just think Martin landed the more meaningful shots in that fight. Body language is a little better. And so he's 0-3 in the UFC. Probably going to be 0-4 and probably get his walking papers as they try to build this Walter Walker, Johnny Walker's brother, and eventually put those guys maybe on the same card in Brazil or another big card and, make some money off the Walker bros. I almost said Walter bros, but yeah, I think Walter Walker gets it done here. I really do.
The craziest thing to be here, Walter Walker's minus 400. Then you compare that to a Robelis de Spain who was like minus 350.
That's crazy.
Going into that fight, I'm like, there's no other outcome for Robelis de Spain than a round 1 KO. There's just no other outcome. And he was a smaller favorite than Walter Walker is here. So there's not a chance in the world I'm taking Walter Walker at minus 400.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have big power. He's only got 4 finishes in the first round. It's been to 4 decisions. And you look at the level of competition he's fighting, not good. Like, he's fighting old fat guys who are like 6 foot, 265, and he's 6'6" with an 81-inch reach. Like, he's beating these guys, and he's not even beating them in impressive fashion. Like, he went to the 4th round with this guy, Alex Nicholson. Alex Nicholson just got knocked out by Chase Sherman in the 1st round in bare knuckle. That's just, it's a terrible look. If you're betting Walter Walker at -400, just call the hotline, bro.
Yeah.
Like, just do it. You're taking it for the name. You're taking it for the hype. He's not worth it at -400 because in all reality, this fight could go to a decision. And Lucas Brzeski, for as bad as he is, he's got decent volume. It's not like he's not even chinny. Like the time that he got knocked out, his last fight against Waldo Cortez Acosta, he got hit in the back of the head. Like, it was a straight right to the back of the head. He turned his head. He takes a shot right in the back of the head, falls on his face. Nasty KO. But I don't know. Maybe that plays a factor here. Lucas Brzeski is not good. But I honestly think at plus 285, like, it's the only side I would play. And I'm honestly tempted to play it because I don't think Walter Walker is really that good. And Lucas Brzeski, if you've seen his IG, might be back on the sauce because he got his win on the Contender Series overturned because I think he popped. And he looks like he's in damn good shape now. Now, he is a little bit undersized, weighs in at 235, 240. But I think on the feet, he's going to have more volume. And I don't think he's like a fish out of the water on the ground. I don't think Walter Walker is like some Carl Williams where he's going to be throwing him across the cage. If he gets on top and in a mount, maybe that's wraps, but -400, I'm not touching it whatsoever. For the pick, give me Lucas Brzeski, man. Give me him. I'm not going to bitch out and just take Walter Walker for the pick after I just absolutely shit on him. I'll take Lucas Brzeski for the pick. And I really just don't see how Walter Walker should be -400 here. I know Brzeski's bad, but I think he might even be good enough to pull off a decision victory here against Walter.
I wonder when like Walter started actually like taking mixed martial arts serious, because his first pro fight was only 4 years ago, and he's going to be, I think, what is he, 28, 27 or 8? So it's not like his first fight was when he was 18 or 19. So I don't know. Maybe he might still just be pretty new to this whole mixed martial arts thing too.
Here's one thing I actually like on the fight. Over 1.5, sitting at -115. I think that's probably the best bet I could see on this fight because Brzeski's not a big power puncher. Walter's only got 4 finishes in the first round against bums. And Brzeski's not particularly chinny. So I like the over 1.5 more than anything. But
what's that line at?
-115 for the over.
That's not bad.
Yeah. I think it's the best play that I could see here. So
especially get a little cage, control, a little cage pushing going on in the first. Kill the clock. I like it.
Moving on, we got Ignacio Bahamondes coming in as a -340 favorite against Christos Giagos, sitting at plus 250. 34 years of age for Giagos, 26 for Bahamondes. Ignacio's coming off a loss to Ludovic Klein, where he was -225 favorite, and he lost very clearly in that one. Ludovic Klein looks like a good fighter, though. And Christos Giagos is coming off a loss as well to Daniel Zellhuber. So both guys coming off losses and looking to get back in the win column. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, man. Bahamondes in his last fight, man, Ludovic Klein is a very good kickboxer. He's smaller. I was very shocked to see Ludovic Klein have that much success just because of how long Bahamondes is and how tall he is too. Like, he's hard to reach. He's got some great volume himself. I just think maybe he needed that kind of loss to improve a little bit. I think coming into this fight, this is a bad matchup for Christos because he gets hit a lot, man. He got his only win in the last 3 years is Ricky Glenn, who just got ran through by Drew Dober as well, and just looks slow and old. Outside of that, like, he's losing to Daniel Zellhuber by submission. Thiago Moises submission, Arman Sarukian. that's going to be a way different style than Ignacio here. But the Daniel Zellhuber fight reminds me a lot of this one. He's fighting a tall kickboxer who does really good work to the body with the kicks, who's long with his punches. I think if Christos wins the fight, it's obviously going to be in round one. He's got to knock him out. But on the same hand, like Ignacio showed against Klein, the dude's got a world-class chin. Like you can't put him away. He got cracked with some massive shots, got his lips and nose busted wide open. Was never going to go out in that fight. So if guys like Ludovic Klein can't find the button, I don't know if Christos is going to do it here either. And after round one, I think Ignacio's volume and his cardio is just going to take over this fight. Wouldn't be surprised if you see a second or third round finish here too. I think Christos is a powerful puncher. I just think he's had his day, man. I think the chin's going to start going if it hasn't already. And I think we're going to see Bahamondes get another win here. Get back in the win column.
I'm going to have to look at this one a little bit more. But because I'm tempted to take a flyer on Christos Giagos because I just don't really think Bahamondes presents a lot of danger on the feet. Like, I know he's going to be long. I know he's going to have a lot of volume. But I look at that fight against Klein, and he's around the same frame as Christos Giagos. Like, Bahamondes had the same advantages that he did against Ludovic Klein here against Giagos. But Ludovic Klein didn't feel any type of danger on the feet. And he was just able to walk through the punches, land takedowns, rack up control time, do damage there. And Bahamondes looked terrible. He looked awful. And Giagos has some capabilities when it comes to getting fighters to the ground, getting their back, and landing big punches as well. So I'm very tempted to look at a Christos Giagos round 1 or 2 here. And honestly, if you look at the stats, like Bahamondes shows an 85% takedown defense, but I think that's kind of fraudulent. Like, a lot of that comes from 12 takedowns attempted from Roosevelt Roberts. Roosevelt Roberts ain't a wrestler. And like Rong Zhu went 1 for 4. Rong Zhu was terrible. And Ludovic Klein went 3 for 5. I think Christos Giagos could land a takedown in round 1 pretty easily, honestly. If he gets in, I think he can get him down and do work there. So, and if you look at Christos Giagos' UFC record, like, he's losing to guys like Gilbert Burns, Charles Oliveira, Armin Saruki, and Thiago Moises, Daniel Zellhuber. Like, he's not losing to bad opponents. And this will be a good test for Bahamondes. Like, if you can beat Giagos, you're pretty solid. But at minus 340, I don't know that I can look at the last fight against Ludovic Klein and pay it confidently. I don't see it. I mean, I know Giagos will probably fade if it goes later in the fight, and Bahamondes can do his work there. But in the first couple rounds, you're going to be clenching your cheeks, man. Because Giagos is explosive. He's dangerous. And I don't think Bahamondes is really that dangerous on the feet. So I don't really have a good pick here, right? Because I got to look at the film a little bit more. I will take Giagos for the pick, but it's one that I'm not confident in right now. And I'm going to have to look at it a little bit more. But I guess for the pick, I'll take Giagos because at minus 340, I don't think that's the side.
Yeah, potential parlay buster for sure. Dude, a prop though, this is my style. This is the props I've been hitting. Bahamondes, super long with his arms and legs. And if Christos just does go in for the takedowns and stuff, I think Ignacio Bahamondes could snatch up the neck, kind of like he did against Rong Zhu in that fight. He submitted him, and then what was I looking at stat wise for Christos Giagos? Yeah, he's been submitted 6 times in his career. Like, the guy is susceptible to the sub, and if he does try to get the fight to the ground, if he's uncomfortable on the feet as the fight progresses, I could definitely see him making a mistake, leaving the neck open, and Bahamondes, getting a choke in there.
Yeah,
it was a slick submission he landed on Rong too. It wasn't like a.
It's kind of like the Zellhuber fight. Like, looked good in round 1, and then round 2 shoots a takedown, gets choked out. I can see the same thing here with Bahamondes. It's just the matter of fact of can
survive in the
first round. Like, I don't know. Maybe Ignacio late by sub or just late in general makes sense because Giagos doesn't have a great gas tank.
Yeah,
that's kind of why I'm thinking round 1 or 2. So, yeah, move on. We got Morgan Charriere coming in as the favorite against Chepe Mariscal. Sitting at plus 124, Mariscal, 31 years of age, undefeated in the UFC, 2 wins. Trevor Peek and Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins was his last win, and that was due to an injury, but somewhat forced by Chepe. He was looking for a throw. Jack Jenkins tries to post on the arm breaks, and he gets a second round verbal tap out arm injury win against Jack Jenkins. So he's undefeated in the UFC, taking on Morgan Charriere, who is also undefeated, 1-0, coming off the win to Manolo Zucchini, a zucchini man from Italy, and not a good fighter. Like he's pretty much just got brought in there. It was a UFC Paris card. Charriere is from France. He's big in Paris, and they brought in this guy from Italy, and he TKOs him in the first round. Solid win, and he's coming in here against Chepe as the favorite. What are you thinking?
Yeah, this is a tough one because if you're a trend better and you like to look at these underdog trends, Chepe Mariscal is 2-0 as the dog in the UFC as well. They keep lining him as the underdog, and he keeps coming through. So, sometimes people will look at that, and then he's fighting Morgan Charriere, who is 1-0 in the UFC. He's got some hype behind him now. Finished him with a body kick, wasn't it? Against the Zucchini man, who I you could see that coming a mile away that he was going to get the knockout. I wasn't high on him at all. I didn't think Manolo Zucchini was going to be good at all by any means. I do like the boxing and the kickboxing from Morgan Charriere, but it just seems like this spot where the UFC builds some hype around these fighters. Morgan is no exception here. And they go in there and they meet a guy who's durable, who can take their punishment early, and as fight goes on, just kind of drag them to those deep waters that they're not accustomed to at this level. I do think Chepe Mariscal is a UFC caliber fighter. I think he's going to have a long career in the UFC. He's got some heavy hands. He's durable. And if he has to, he'll make the fight ugly by putting you up against the cage and seeing and kind of testing your wrestling game too. If he gets you on the ground, he's very, very solid all around. Good control, will get into dominant position. He can submit you. He'll land some ground and pound. And if he makes it that style of fight, I just think I think Morgan Charriere could be in over his head. But at the same time, early in the fight, Charriere is going to be dangerous, and I think it'll be a very evenly matched fight. But just at this level, I just feel like Chepe's proved that he's got the style and the ability to fight any style of fight Morgan wants to here. You want to make it a kickboxing match? Chepe's got the chin and he's got the hands. If you want to, kind of extend this fight and see who's got the better cardio, Chepe will do that as well. If you want to make it a wrestling match, Chepe's probably going to have the advantage. So, yeah, I'm interested to take a dog shot. I wish the line was a little wider though. I don't know, plus 124. I'm not quite comfortable with for a guy like Chepe against a big power guy like Morgan. So for the pick, I'm going to take I'm going to go with the underdog trend. I'm going to take Chepe Mariscal, but probably not going to bet on him right now. I'll look and see what the line does throughout the week.
Yeah, I don't really agree with the line here because Charriere's his resume is just not good. Like, who's his best win? Like, you can't even name him. And if you try to name a name, nobody's going to know who it is. And he's 19-9. He's got a lot of fights. It just doesn't really make sense to me. Like, Chepe's got a ton of fights against UFC level guys like Gregor Gillespie, Bryce Mitchell, Pat Sabatini, Yusuf Zalal, Joe Anderson Brito, Steve Garcia. Like, those are all fights that he had before the UFC. And he actually beat Yusuf Zalal, beat Pat Sabatini. So, I mean, he's got good wins on the regional scene, and he's got good fights on the regional scene. So he's been through the gauntlet before even coming to the UFC. And that was a big reason why I took him to beat Trevor Peek. Like, I'm like, he's going to be levels above Trevor Peek as far as skills go. Like, he's training in Colorado with the likes of Justin Gaethje. Like, he's at a great camp. He's a very skilled guy. He's a tough guy. He's a junkyard dog. He's going to go in there and fight for your dollar. And the biggest tell for me is this fight, the over 2.5 is set at minus 185. So they're really expecting this fight to hit the scorecards. And if you look at Charriere, 8 of his 9 losses are by decision. So he's a guy that if it goes to the scorecards, more often than not, he's going to lose. Most of that, it comes to he's a low volume striker, and he really just relies on his power to eventually take over on his opponents. That's just not going to happen against Chepe. Like, Sure, could Morgan Charriere go in there and knock out Chepe? Yes. Chepe's been knocked out before.
Yeah.
Once against Joe Anderson Brito. That's Joe Anderson Brito. Okay, like that's not Morgan Charriere. And then the last time he got knocked out was against Steve Garcia. If you watch that fight, it was an early stoppage, 100%. And even if it wasn't, like that's Steve Garcia. Steve Garcia is knocking out like everybody right now. So I don't think the shots from Charriere are really going to affect Chepe on the feet. He can mix in the wrestling as well. He's very well rounded on the feet. Like I think Chepe is going to have more output. This fight goes to a decision. I think it's going to be Chepe all day, just for the matter of fact that he works for the entire 15 minutes. And at this price, the underdog price, I think Chepe should be favored here. So I like the dog here. Chepe is criminally underrated, and he's going to be the dog here. Maybe he moves into the favorite. I know line's kind of moving his way right now. Maybe that swings back the other way, but from right now, it seems like the line's trending in Chepe's direction. I think rightfully so. So I'm going to go with him. We move on to the co-main event. Alexander Hernandez coming in at -210 against Damon Jackson, sitting at +162. Damon Jackson, 35 years of age, even though he looks like he's about 50. Alexander Hernandez, 31. Still seems young, but he's 31. And he has always had trouble at the 145-pound weight class because he's a massive 145er when it comes to muscle density. Like he's 5'9". He's got a 72-inch reach, but he's going to be going there looking like a freak of nature as far as, the muscular density goes. So that's always been a problem for him. You think he can put that problem aside to get a win here over Damon Jackson?
I do. Damon Jackson, dude, it's crazy that he came into the UFC in 2014. It does not seem like he's a 10-year vet. I don't know. Maybe in like the last 10 years, he just doesn't have like the most fights in the UFC. He put together a decent win streak when he beat Charles Rosa, Camilla Kirk, Dan Argueta, and Pat Sabatini. But lately, after the Ige loss, like he gets knocked out in the second round against Ige badly, was getting touched up. Ige was actually able to land a takedown on him. They scored at a takedown. He landed a knockdown. Damon Jackson, when he stands with these strikers, just isn't the best on the feet, in my opinion. He's got good wrestling. Like if he can get you down and take your back, like against Pat Sabatini, which was impressive because Pat's a very good grappler. He's very good with his control. If he gets the body lock, body triangle, he's going to do some damage. If he can flatten you out, he's good with the submissions. But against like Alexander Hernandez, I think Hernandez kind of gets a bad rap. Like this guy's very athletic and he's very skilled. He's fought in some killers. Bill Algeo, he lost by decision, just got a lot of volume put on him in that fight, like Bill does. Billy Quarantillo knocked him out in the second round. That's a couple years ago when Billy was still beating everybody just by drowning him and taking him to late into fights. Loses to Renato Moicano, loses to Thiago Moises. So it's not like he's losing to bums by any means. He just beat Jim Miller, where he outlanded him by a lot, was able to take all of Jim Miller's shots, was able to take him all 3 rounds and win a decision pretty comfortably. Before that, his win was Mike Breeden and then Chris Grutzmacher before that by knockout back in 2020. So he's fought in really, really good fighters. Damon Jackson is a decent striker. He's a little unorthodox, but I think he's going to be at a massive speed disadvantage on the feet against Alexander Hernandez. I do think if Damon Jackson can get the fight to the ground, sure, he can win, but Hernandez isn't a bad wrestler himself. Like he's not terrible by any means. He holds a 60% takedown defense, which isn't, the best on paper. But again, he's fighting guys like Renato Moicano, Thiago Moises. I think he actually took Drew Dober down in that fight. But, he's fighting some decent guys that have some good wrestling. So Damon Jackson, also a thing to note for me. He's a tad older now, 35 years old, taking some damage in some fights. Hernandez will have the ability, especially in the first 2 rounds, to really do some damage at range if the fight takes place on the feet. So I'm not taking Damon Jackson as the underdog here. I just like a lot more on the Hernandez side as far as speed, athletic ability, strength. He does have some pop in his hands too, and we've seen that kind of be Damon Jackson's downfall in some fights lately. So yeah, give me Hernandez here for the pick. Not confident at -210, but I do think he should beat Damon Jackson at this stage in both their careers.
Yeah, it seems like that's always the story when we talk about Alexander Hernandez as like a favorite. It's like he should win, but we don't know if he's actually going to go out there and like perform to his abilities.
Yeah.
And that's always the question. Um, and I don't know if this fight for him is like if it's a good matchup or not. Like Damon Jackson is a guy that could slow down a fight, get your back in for like 2 or 3 minutes at a time. But on the feet, like he has very basic stand up. Like
Mhm.
it's not really dangerous. And I think Alexander Hernandez should be able to feel that early and just try to like tee off on him. So I think Alexander Hernandez should be able to get him out of there. One thing I noted in the last fight for Damon Jackson when he fought Billy Q, he never lost a fight by decision. So I took Billy Q round 2 or 3, like you normally do in a Billy Q fight, and he managed to survive. So that was his first loss by decision. They're not expecting this fight to hit the scorecards. So I think Hernandez probably gets him out of there. The only thing he can't do is give up his back because I don't think Jackson's gonna like be able to take him down with ease. Like Hernandez has 60% takedown defense, but just the athleticism from Hernandez is going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot tougher for Damon Jackson to get him to the ground. I know he took Billy Q down 3 times, but he went 3 for 13, and he didn't do a whole lot with him. I know in the first round he looked pretty good there. I think that's probably his best bet. Get him down early and take over from there, but I don't know if it's going to be able to work out. So Hernandez is the pick for me. And Damon Jackson is traded out of Fortis MMA. And if you don't know by now, Fortis MMA fighters are absolute trash.
Yep.
Like I was on I filled in for Matty on his show, and I was talking with Austin, his co-host, and he just brought it to my attention. Like every single Fortis MMA fighter just fights like an absolute idiot because I don't know what Safe Sayud is doing to these guys, but they're just it's a rough one. It's a rough one as far as watching their game plans and how it unfolds and how they fight, how their mid fight adjustments just don't even work. They're not even doing anything. So hate to see that for Damon Jackson, but yeah, that makes the Hernandez pick a little bit more confident. I'll take him. And but once again, don't love the price. Minus 210 on Hernandez is always scary because he could just gas out after the first, and you're left there sitting with a minus 210 price tag. But he's the pick. Brings us to the main event. Brendan Allen coming in at minus 225 against Chris Curtis, sitting at plus 172. The rematch that has been built over quite some time. Chris Curtis originally knocked out Brendan Allen in his second UFC fight back in 2021, December of 2021. So that would make that, 2 years and about 5 months since that happened. And since that loss, Brendan Allen has not lost a fight. So he's been on quite the tear.
Been active too.
Very active, yeah. So that's 6 wins in a row for Brendan Allen.
5 finishes.
Yeah, 5 finishes, 5 rear naked chokes, which is pretty impressive that he gets it done every single time by a rear naked choke. The only guy he couldn't finish was the Mamba, Jacob Malkoun. And this time he's going to have to make some adjustments. You go back and watch that fight. He was, I would say, overconfident fighting Chris Curtis because it looked like he was in there thinking I can just run through this guy. And eventually he got caught in round 2. It was a pretty close first round. Both guys had their moments. And then in round 2, he just gets caught with a right hook, stumbles. Chris Curtis jumps on him. Never went to the ground, but he jumped on him, threw him up against the cage, landed some knees, landed some uppercuts, landed some body shots, eventually got him out of there. Chris Curtis is 36, but he did beat this guy already. He is the plus 172 dog. Do you think he can pull it off?
Yeah, I'm honestly a little surprised at the line, just because Chris Curtis did knock him out when they fought. Chris Curtis has shown really good takedown defense too in fights. How many did he stuff against Adolfo Vieira? Like 22. Vieira went like 0 for 22, and he just stuffed everything easily. And if Brendan Allen wants to win the fight, I think everybody knows it's got to be on the ground. Like he's got his striking's improving for sure. He just doesn't really have the power, I don't think, to knock out Chris Curtis. And Curtis is a very slick boxer too. I mean, Curtis isn't really out there getting knocked out by anybody. So yeah, I just think being that Chris Curtis is on short notice, I'm sure that has a little bit to do with the line. Being that he is 3 years older than he was the first time they fought, and now he's over that 35-year-old hump, and Brendan Allen has shown a lot of improvements and is constantly winning since that loss to Chris Curtis. I think probably plays a part in having him as a -225 favorite. But I look at the first fight, and the first round between the two is actually really interesting. Chris Curtis, as good as his takedown defense is, Brendan Allen did catch one of his kicks, or maybe shot it on a single leg, I don't remember, and was able to kind of elevate him, just being that Brendan Allen's 6'2" and Chris Curtis is 5'10", was able to elevate him and kind of trip him up and take the back for a split second. So I think, he'll be looking for those type of takedowns here. I don't think he's going to mess around on the feet as much as he did in the first fight, because he knows now he can be hit by him and put down by him. But I watched Chris Curtis's last couple of fights, no contest against Nasruddin Imavov, and then, against Kelvin Gastelum. It was a very even fight. Chris Curtis kind of got head-butted in the second round, and then Kelvin just seemed like he had more in the tank. I don't really know how much I look into that headbutt, but changing like the complete outcourse of that fight or the outlook of that fight. I have noticed signs of Curtis kind of slowing down in these last year or so, like in these fights that are going long. Even against Marc-Andre Barrios, like he landed a ton of significant strikes. He also ate a lot, and he wasn't throwing near as much at the end of fight with a lot of power as he was, let's say, like 5-6 years ago. So he is a very good boxer. He does get hit a little bit. And I think if you look from the first point these two fought each other 2.5 years ago, if you ask me which guy's gotten better, I think it's Brendan Allen for sure. I think Chris Curtis is kind of stagnant in his improvements. I think we know what we're getting with Chris Curtis, whereas Brendan Allen just kind of shows improvements every time out. So, yeah, it's a tough pick for me. I am going to go with Brendan Allen to get it done. I do think he's going to be a lot smarter in his approach in this fight. I could definitely see Curtis winning again by some kind of knockout, but Allen's got to pace himself a little bit and not be so inclined to engage in that striking with him this time. I think he's got to try to get him up against the cage, use his size, because even looking at him in that first fight, he was so much bigger than Curtis. I think he's just got to use that here and slow Curtis down, try to get to the second and third round, and go from there. But it is going to be a tight one. I'm not betting Brendan Allen at -225 by any means.
Yeah. I laughed after you said, I don't think Brendan Allen can knock out Chris Curtis. And the reason behind that, it's kind of a story. But we sat here, 2 fights ago for Brendan Allen when he fought Andre Muniz, and I sat here and said, I think Brendan Allen has good jiu-jitsu, but I think Andre Muniz has elite jiu-jitsu. What does he go? He goes out there and subs him. And Brendan Allen gets his suits done by our buddy Mark Russell. And so I actually was on a FaceTime call with him, and he's like, yo, you're that dude that said Brendan Allen has good jiu-jitsu, but Andre Muniz has elite jiu-jitsu. And he was laughing at me because I was dead wrong. And now that you say that, I could just see this getting clipped up where like Brendan Allen goes out there and like knocks him out. And you're the guy that's like, I don't think he can't knock him out. It's funny. But this line is interesting. I actually kind of expected it to be this way though, because what both fighters have done since the last fight, Brendan Allen should be a -225 favorite. Like he's got 5 finishes in 6 fights, won all 6. Chris Curtis has a couple losses and really just hasn't looked like a top 15 fighter. Like he hasn't looked like a beast by any means, but he does have amazing boxing skills. Mm-hmm. And in this fight, if Brendan Allen fights like he did last time, probably going to get caught. Like he can't go in there and brawl or stand in the pocket with Chris Curtis. And I would assume he goes back to the drawing board, looks at that fight. And I actually think he has kind of done that in some of his fights. Like he's not getting into these brawls with guys anymore. He's kind of using more of his skills, using his kicks, getting fighters to the ground, using his jiu-jitsu there. And he has an amazing jiu-jitsu. Like he gets it to the ground, he's going to be threatening some type of submission. There's a reason he has 5 rear naked chokes in his last 6 fights. He's dangerous there. The problem is Chris Curtis don't really got a neck. And he's got a massive beard too. So it's going to be tough to get that rear naked choke on Chris Curtis. If there's anybody that can do it, it's Brendan Allen. Because I don't know. I mean, everybody was probably on Brendan Allen KO, and somehow he found the rear naked choke on Paul Craig. So it's like he goes in there like, I'm getting a rear naked choke no matter what. Knocks down Bruno Silva, jumps on the neck. It's like he doesn't want a TKO. He just wants the subs. Maybe he's going for the sub record or something. But in this fight, I think he's definitely the better overall fighter. Yep. I think the only way he loses is if he gets knocked out again. I think he should be able to keep it close on the feet, maybe even outpoint him at times. The problem is if he does keep it on the feet, he's just giving Chris Curtis a way into this fight. Like, he's got to be able to shoot the takedowns. He actually has an impressive 47% takedown accuracy. Like, I actually didn't expect that from him, just because he's not like a guy that's going to rack up a bunch of takedowns, but maybe that's just the fact that he gets you to the ground and he finishes you. So if he does get a takedown, he's going to be dangerous there. I think he could actually find a submission here, just because he's very good in those spots, and maybe Chris Curtis eventually cracks. Like, he's a guy that doesn't get finished very often. Maybe this fight extends and Brendan Allen can find it later. But every moment this fight is on the feet, Chris Curtis is gaining momentum, and I would hope Brendan Allen takes that away from him pretty early. So I think Brendan Allen is the better fighter. I'm going to take him for the pick. Don't necessarily love the price, but I think it's accurate. You know, he's the better fighter. He's on a win streak, and look at who Chris Curtis is beating since beating Brendan Allen. It's Joaquin Buckley at 185. Like, Buckley's a 170er.
Yeah,
Adolfo Vieira, who has not really any stand up, and it's Marc-Andre Barrio, who's very easily hittable, and that was a split decision too. So I think Brendan Allen's the rightful favorite. I'll take it for the pick. Maybe I'll throw him in a parlay, but yeah, I don't know. Not too much price.
He's gonna have those purple shorts on. Better not get knocked out in purple shorts.
Is he getting the purple shorts?
That's what he claims. That's what I've been seeing, but I don't know. In all seriousness, though, I've been playing the Brendan Allen KO for the last 2 fights, just waiting for it to come, and he almost has it against Silva, and he could have flattened out Paul Craig and got it in that fight too, but he just goes to the sub. So if he gets that position over Curtis, maybe it'll come in this fight.
Dude, I remember the KO on Paul Craig was like plus 120, and the sub was like plus 330. Yeah. And I'm like, why the hell did I not take the sub, man? Like,
I took the round KO too, 2 and 3.
He just clearly likes to get the subs more, and he just hunts them. So yeah. Brendan Allen's the pick. And that's the breakdown for UFC Vegas 90. Once again, if you want all of our bets, jump in the Homo Fight Picks Discord. The premium membership is available in the link down below. Hit the subscription button for us if you enjoyed the show. Drop a comment. Let us know if you're on us with the picks or not. Hit the like button for us. We appreciate it. At Hey Jai Picks on the medias. You can follow us at Home of Picks on Instagram. Where can they find you?
All social medias at the Parlay MMA.
Appreciate you all. Good luck on your bets. And we'll see you back here next week breaking down UFC 300. Till then, the XXL.